Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 12th of February, and joining me on this edition, Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
Come with me if you want to not die.
News Editor Mark Hodgkinson.
He's coming. Cover your butt.
Audio Reviewer Ed Selley.
All I'm asking for is total perfection.
And special guest star Mark Botwright.
Go sports team.
So, welcome along to this week's podcast. It was in the post. It had been in the post for a long time, Ed, but you finally got the flu.
I don't have the flu. I've got Will came back with some malady from preschool. And because
you're not good enough for the flu, are you?
4-year-olds don't understand to cover their mouths while coughing. So he has charmingly infected both myself and my wife. I mean, I'm coming out of it now. I still have a good old Bob Fleming on me, so I'll periodically have to mute at various points to hack my guts out. But I feel all right now. I had a bit of a low point in the week, but I was able to keep going. You know, it's at the end of the day, what we do for the most part isn't that physically arduous unless you're unboxing or boxing something absolutely enormous. So provided that it's in situ, you can just sort of sit there and listen to it and feel sorry for yourself. It works all right.
I'm assuming you managed to catch up with some TV as well then, for your downtime.
I haven't watched that much. I've given up on Britannia because it's just too odd. I mean, it's just all over the shop. And as someone that actually did a bit of Roman history, it offends my sensibilities. I haven't watched that. I haven't even got around to watching Street Outlaws yet, and I'm several wheeler dealers behind. And there's new air crash investigation starting soon, and that's going to further screw up my schedule. So
yeah, wheeler dealers. It started off with promise, and it's not great.
Well, I don't know what to say. Street Outlaws remains utterly irresponsible and very compelling to watch. So what can I say? You know, it's crap, but it's weirdly compelling.
And Mr. Botwright's back on the podcast this week. How are you doing, Mark?
Yeah, not too bad. I've got over my illness, struggling through.
And what did you have?
Leprosy.
Yeah.
The clap.
Thank you. No, just general very bad cold, And it's always annoying when you have one of those colds where you think to yourself, oh, this will be all right, actually, because I'll catch up on watching TV. But then you've got that kind of eye strain, so you can't actually watch TV. So you're reduced to going, I've got to listen to the radio now. I've got to try and find something that I can just sit and listen to. And so, yeah, it wasn't great.
You could have gone through the
music
back catalogue of AVForums podcast. That's what you could have done.
I wasn't that ill.
You weren't delirious.
Yeah.
Right, so as you're feeling well, Mark, why don't you tell us what we can win in the competitions?
Okie dokie. You can win Groundhog Day on 4K Blu-ray, and that one runs till the 14th of February. And you can also win The Deuce, the complete first season on Blu-ray, and that one runs till the 23rd of February.
So you got 2 days to get in for Groundhog Day. It doesn't repeat, so,
Yeah, this is your one chance.
Yeah. It doesn't matter about getting cards or flowers or anything else for the 14th of February. You get yourself in for that competition, 4K Blu-ray Groundhog Day. If you're looking for a bargain as well, I just picked up the Lego Movie on Amazon for £7.50 4K Blu-ray.
I got it for $4.99.
Oh, bugger off.
Sorry, off eBay.
Was it used though, Mark?
No, it's brand new.
Oh,
I think it's the Spanish, some sort of South American version. It's a Region A Blu-ray. But the Ultra HD, obviously, region free. Yeah.
Right, okay. And did it have written in Biro on it, the Lego
No,
Movie?
no, it's all in Spanish, but yeah, it's fine. The movie's in English.
Right, previous competition winners, Mr. Botwright?
None.
Keeps winning this thing. Right, so that's competitions. Get in, get winning them. And if you fancy a free case of beer, the offer is still on at the moment that we told you about last week. So if you listener and reader of AVForums can get a free case of craft beer, thanks to our friends at beer52.com. They are a craft beer discovery club, which is basically, I was thinking about this, Ed, this is like the Britannia of craft beers. You remember Britannia?
Is that the record club?
Yeah.
I mean, I know of it. I don't want to remind
you. Don't remember it? I'll have to go to somebody a bit older. Steve?
I do remember it, yeah. They would send you a record once a week or something like that, or once a month, wouldn't they?
So anyway, beer52.com, the Craft Beer Discovery Club, giving away 8 craft beers for free. All you do is you pay for the delivery in their free trial. Now, they are a monthly club. I think the cost is £24 a month. But for your £24 a month, you get 8 craft beers, you get a copy of their magazine, which is called Ferment, and you also get a mystery snack. It just says and snacks, but it's a mystery snack. And like I say, all you pay is £5.95 delivery for your first box. And of course, if the club's not for you, if it's not your thing, and after you've tasted the beers, they're not really what you're looking for, then obviously you can stop your deliveries at any time, no catch. So if you want to take this offer up, then it's beer52.com/AVF. Go and claim your free case of beer. And Ed, they delivered a free case for you because you are our craft beer connoisseur. Now, obviously, we're in no way endorsing this club. This is your honest opinion based on what's come through, and obviously with the caveat that you've been ill this week and your taste buds might not be working.
Well, no, I had one of them last night. First up, I was sort of this blindsided me a bit because it's a lot more ambitious than I thought it was going to be. I figured when I said, it's, around a Dutch theme, that, they'd have rounded up some likely offerings from some of the usual and perhaps less usual suspects of the Dutch brewing industry. But no, these are all custom done for them. Now, in terms of what we were saying last week, Steve was saying, if it was sort of pilsners and stuff, I think it's fair to say that this is down the more, if you like, the more adventurous side of beer, which I think is a good thing because you can wander off to any shop and buy normal beer. But there is, for example, there's a Saison, Saison beer here, which has got nasturtiums in it, which is a type of flour, which is possibly a little on the unconventional side, but they're quite interesting ingredient in food. And there's another one here which has got pepper and cress in, and this is perhaps a little left field, but if the intention is to broaden your horizons for you to try different things and so on and so forth, then it's definitely going to do that, and it's entirely bespoke to to this box as best as I can work out. They're all branded up in that regard anyway. And the other thing that they've done, which I think is to be celebrated, is that unlike some of the issues I was having with American craft beer out in Vegas, it's not all at sort of 28%. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's 2 strong ones here, but there's also 3 that are 4% or lower, so not everything is going to induce sort of serious issues. Well, yeah, you can enjoy 1 or 2 of them midweek without any stinging repercussions the following day. So this is going to be something where if you're simply looking for 8 lagers to be delivered in a hassle-free fashion, well, this isn't it. This isn't going to be it. But that someone's put a lot of thought into this, and it's very intriguing. So I'm going to potter through the remaining 7, probably over the weekend.
I was going to say in one night.
We'll see where we go from there. I mean, I'm genuinely intrigued by it, and we'll see. As I say, we'll see what the balance is across the 8 of them, and work out whether I want to go with it.
What I'm dying to know is, what was the snack?
I don't know if I want to spoil that. I haven't eaten the snack yet, anyway. But if I tell what the snack is on the podcast, it will spoil the mystery snack. Should we not wait until a couple of them have made it out into the field, and then we can all discuss the relative merits of the snack?
Well, maybe it's something for discussion in the thread underneath the podcast.
Fine.
But if you want to join Ed, if you want to sample these 8 craft beers for free for this month and claim your free case, then go to beer52.com/AVF and claim that. The Winter Olympics is on, so it's a good opportunity for you to sit down, sample the beer, and watch some fantastic sport.
Watch
on the
incredible
TV.
Sportsmen whilst you get legless.
Well, that's what you'll be doing, Ed, isn't it?
Well, I watched loads of winter sport anyway, as you know. I found it weirdly relaxing. But yeah, it's great. But I don't know, since I've had Eurosport for so long with a really good winter sports program, the Winter Olympics isn't quite as magical as it was, because I get to watch people, death sledding all the time. But yeah,
but there'll be familiar names to you now, so you'll know who's who. You'll have your favourites now.
Yeah, no, that's true. Although obviously, Manuel Pfister, my favourite named Winter Olympian of all time, no longer competes, so that's a shame.
Oh, what a shame.
What about Fanny Smeller? She's still there.
I don't know. I think the ski jumper Andreas Wank is still active as well. So it's not all bad in terms of great names. But Manuel Pfister will forever be my favourite. Need to stress he was a PF Pfister, not just Pfister.
Is it Manuel or Manuel?
Well, they always used to describe him as Manuel. He's Austrian, not Spanish,
Yeah.
So he can't help that. And he was quite good as well, I need to stress.
Okay, I think it's time we moved on. Right, so moving on to some hardware stuff, and Steve was on the travels yet again this week, although it didn't involve 5-star hotels and any flights, which I suppose you'll be glad of that. It just meant a drive along the M4, didn't it?
Yeah, that was quite nice change. Just driving down the M4 and the M25. Unfortunately, on the way back, it also meant driving along the M25 and the M4 at 5 o'clock. So what should have been a 2-hour journey took about 3.5. But yeah, so I went down to the Sony's head office in Weybridge for their annual UK trade show. So I should stress that this is a show aimed not just at journalists, but also at their distributors and dealers and retailers. So it's a proper trade show where they basically give everyone a first look at the actual UK lineup. Now, so for me, it was a bit disappointing because at CES, they had their TV lineup. They announced all the TV lineup. They announced all the AV products, and I also did some demonstrations as well. So I had seen all of that at CES. Now, I'm not saying that every journalist at the event on Wednesday had been at CES. So obviously there were people coming along who hadn't seen anything yet, which is fair enough. But, I went along on the assumption they would at least announce pricing and availability and hopefully answer some questions about things like Dolby Vision. They had no information on pricing or availability. Wouldn't answer any questions on Dolby Vision. So basically, I just saw everything that I'd already seen at CES. So for me, it was largely a waste of time, which is unfortunate. I was particularly disappointed that they remain very, I'm not sure what it is, less than transparent when it comes to product information. If you ask them what panels are you using, they won't tell you. You can tell some of them are VA and some are IPS, but just, walking off as looking at them at an angle. But, that's just like a fundamental question. So is it 8-bit or 10-bit? Those kind of things. How many local dimming zones does the XF90 have? No, it won't tell us that, even though obviously once we get them in, we'll count them. Funny enough, they moaned that when we count them, we always underestimate the number of zones. I said, well, why don't you just tell us then what the number of zones are? And that won't happen, will it?
Well, I mean, every other manufacturer is quite open and honest when it comes to that kind of thing. So I don't see why they're getting so tight-lipped with their specifications at all. They've
always been like that, haven't they? They're a strange bunch, Sony. They're very, very limited in terms of the information they're prepared to put out, technical sort of behind the scenes information, if you like. Obviously, they'll happily announce all the features. But when you start trying to drill down into the detail, then they become a bit, as I say, less than transparent. And I like to see them be more transparent. I mean, the fact that they wouldn't talk about Dolby Vision, they obviously, everyone knows that the US launch has been a disaster, and they are essentially beta testing in public in the US. So when we ask them, when are you going to release the firmware update in the UK and in Europe, the answer was hopefully this month. But they didn't sound they were pretty non-committal about the date. So I wouldn't necessarily expect it to arrive in February, even though that's what they originally said they were going to do. Clearly, they want to get it sorted out in the States first before they roll it out into other parts of the world. What that essentially means is that we don't really have a firm date yet for the 2017 TVs update. When the 2018 TVs do ship, they won't ship with Dolby Vision. That will need to be added via an update once you get the TV.
So I mean, you could be waiting another 12 months.
Well, I mean, I think the idea is that they're hoping to have the update out before these TVs start shipping, the new TVs. And then when you get it, you plug it in, and it will do an update immediately, and it will have Dolby Vision. That's assuming, of course, that they've managed to get the UK and European update out and fixed and done before they start shipping. So, yeah, it could be you end up waiting even after you've got your TV.
Yeah, which I mean, creates a very strange situation. Mr. Botwright, would you go and spend, how much is an A1, Steve? With $3,000 in it?
It's about $3,000 for the 55-inch. No, it's about $2.5 grand.
EFA, we can sort of guess that that'll be about $2,500 to $3,000. So, Mr. Botwright, would you buy this without having Dolby Vision on it out of the box?
No, I don't think I would be trusting that it would come in good time.
And Ed?
No. Not when the option is there to buy it in a non-vaporware form.
Okay.
If everyone's under the same disadvantage, then it's a 50-50 thing. You just got to who you believe the most. But if someone's physically got it in situ, then no, not a chance.
Hodge?
No, same. I'll just buy an LG.
Right. I mean, this is the problem at the minute, Stephen, and it's one of these things that we've said it a couple of times now on the podcast, and I'm going to stand by it. Do not buy anything on the presumption that something will get updated in the future, ever.
Because it's not just Sony that we can accuse of this. Plenty of other examples of manufacturers promising stuff that they have not delivered. Panasonic are guilty of it. Samsung are guilty of it.
Samsung with the little box of tricks. This is fully updatable. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then after 2 years, actually, it's not updatable now. But was that not a case of nobody took them up on it?
What, on the replacing the box with a...
I think it was a massive lack of interest in that, wasn't there?
Yeah. So technically it wasn't quite Samsung's problem. It was a case of people didn't get... But again, do not buy something on the promise that it'll get updated in the future is basically our advice, isn't it?
Yeah. I just buy it on what it's got and assume that's what it'll do. And, maybe if you get something else added later, that's a nice bonus. But, the thing is, it's not just that this rollout hasn't been particularly well managed. But, they announced it in January 2017. It was supposed to go in the summer of 2017. We're now in February 2018, and they still haven't actually released it in the UK. So they are not only late, but they managed to deliver it late and wrong. So it's just not great.
And of course, they're now relying on other people to bail them out on this.
Yes, they are. And as you said, Phil, maybe within the Dolby contracts, the other manufacturers have to support all versions of Dolby, but there's no incentive for Panasonic to rush a update for their player so that it works with Sony TVs, is there? I mean, Oppo might do that because they're independent and they don't make TVs, and therefore they want their player's big USP as it does everything. So I'm sure they will do that. But if you're an AVR manufacturer, and you've just updated your AVRs to pass Dolby Vision and HLG, and now you've got to do another firmware update to pass another version of Dolby Vision to support Sony TVs. Again, is there any massive incentive for you to do that? You're helping out a competitor, but it is not an ideal situation. Even Sony's own player won't actually ship with Dolby Vision on it. It'll be added via a firmware update later. Presumably they'll add that once they've sorted out the problem with the TVs, because I want their player to support their TVs. But it is a bit of a mess. And you have to, who do you blame? Well, partly you blame Sony, obviously, but I think also you have to blame Dolby to a certain extent, because the whole point of Dolby was it was meant to be this closed ecosystem that they controlled, and you'd get everything from end to end. And clearly, so in my opinion, they seem to have let Sony do things they perhaps might not have let other manufacturers do, and it has resulted in a situation that's less than optimal.
It's not great. And Ed is someone who has worked for a manufacturer in the past. I mean, different manufacturers have different ways of approaching the market, but I think you're always on a sticky wicket when it comes to saying you're going to do something in the future when technically you don't know if you can or you can't.
It's a huge risk. And there's always a school of thought that says that if you promise something publicly, your engineering team has no choice but to make it work. But I'm afraid it really doesn't work like that. Engineers generally just function in the art of the possible. The biggest problem has been that from the moment that you start licensing other people's bits of code, especially, I mean, it's not the same as the old CD license, for example, and things like that. There's variance in how it then works with the chipset that you've selected and so on and so forth, and it becomes just if you like a sort of let me try that as a sentence. It becomes an escalating issue of complexity, as especially then you suddenly realize that you're the only company that's perhaps doing it that way, or actually, after you have received a verbal confirmation from the people that you signed the licensing agreement with that they're going to support your hardware, they then formally come out and announce that they've got an official partnership with hardware provider B. Essentially, if you haven't got it, don't promise it unless you physically hold an example of it in prototype form in your hands. You don't have it. This is an unfortunate incident, but it's not the first, and it certainly won't be the last.
Yeah, and I guess that the takeaway from this, Steve, is like we keep saying and keep banging on, but I think it's important because there are people on the forums who immediately think that they should be entitled to updates and all the rest of it. But when you buy a product, if it has the feature on it, then great. If it doesn't have the feature on it, then you can't expect it 6 to 12 months down the line to actually work. Or to be even offered.
In the small print of every product will be that the manufacturer reserves the right not to update.
They have covered themselves. Don't you worry. Legally, they're definitely covered. Yeah. So all these people saying I should take them to court or this, they should sue them. No, don't worry. They'll cover themselves legally. But I guess if you're not interested in Dolby Vision, it's a moot point, isn't it? Fill your boots if you fancy it. I mean, to be fair to Sony, I don't want to bash them totally here. They had some good-looking products there. The XF90, for example, has potential to be, I think, a killer product this year in terms of LCD. With a full array, direct LED backlight, local dimming. The X Motion Clarity feature looks really good, where it uses black frame insertion but boosts the brightness, so you don't get those dim images you get with BFI. I thought that looked really good. So, if that's priced competitively, I think that could be a cracking telly. I also really liked their new, they're taking an interesting approach with the soundbars. They've got a couple of soundbars that support Dolby Atmos and DTSX, but they don't use upward firing speakers. They're using psychoacoustics as LG are on some of their TVs to create this immersive experience. Eric Kingdom was there, and he was genuine. I could tell by the look on his face, he thought he really had a good product here. He was really pleased with it and the performance and the level of immersion it could create by doing that, rather than using upward firing drivers. Obviously, they say if you want the best results, you need to put speakers on the ceiling, but let's be honest, for most people, that's just impractical. So that's an interesting product as well. So I think they've got some good stuff coming out. It's just unfortunate that they seem to be a bit tight when it comes to information, and obviously it would be nice to see some pricing. I'm assuming the reason they're not pricing the OLEDs in particular, the AF8, yet is because everybody's waiting to see where LG price, and then they'll announce their pricing. So it'll be interesting to see what Panasonic do next week at their European convention, because as far as I'm aware, LG haven't announced any pricing yet. So it'll be interesting to see where they've got pricing for the EZ952. So is it EZ or FZ? FZ952 and FZ802.
And what is that? You off another jolly next week?
Yes, next week I am in Mallorca.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. Romain, you better take the suntan lotion, Steve. You know what your head's like after 5 minutes in the sun. You'll be like Mr. Lobster on camera.
I don't know. Will it be particularly warm this time of year? I'm not sure.
Southern Europe.
No, it rains in February all the time.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be particularly nice.
You hope so. Yeah, it'll be snowing. Well, mind, we went to Nice in February, didn't we? And we're thinking, south coast of France, it should be okay. It should be like t-shirt weather or whatever. And it was snowing when we were there.
It was freezing, yeah. Absolutely freezing. It was colder than it was in England.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's Sony's UK trade show. The reports are on the homepage. They'll still be there when the podcast goes up this week. So have a look at those if you want more details on the models that are coming this year and the features and everything else. It's all in there. And there's also a video on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/AVForums. Now, let's move on to Samsung, who have launched at ISE. Now, ISE, for those who don't know, is a big trade show that happens every year in Amsterdam. It's very much your smart home technologies, very much custom installer. I mean, you're talking about really high-end products, professional products, all that kind of thing. But it's a big show every February in Amsterdam, and Samsung have launched their first 3D cinema LED screen at this event, and it looks interesting, Mark.
Yeah, this is on the back of them roughly a year ago announcing their first ever cinema LED screen, which was a 34-foot 4K display that was capable of going very bright and capable of exceeding DCI, and they've managed to make it into a 3D capable screen. So it pretty much mirrors all the capabilities of the 2D version, but it's able, and I think the takeaway from this is it can do 3D with the glasses on at 48 nits to the eye, which is considerably brighter than you'd normally get in a conventional cinema, which should really improve the 3D effect. It's just a shame that 3D is on the way out, but I guess it isn't for cinema. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if it ever comes to the UK, and interesting to actually sample it if it does.
I mean, I've got questions. I'm sure Steve's got loads of questions as well about this technology, which hasn't been answered yet. And I'd really like to see one, just to see what it's like. It sounds interesting. It sounds very much like the Wall, Steve, in terms of how it's put together and so on. But I suppose you're sitting far enough back. If you think about it, in the cinema 30-foot screen, you're sitting far enough back that you're not going to see anything unless there's issues between the panels looking the same. Yeah,
I was just thinking that. I don't think you'll see the join from that distance, but I was curious as to, every panel can be slightly different and unique. So how do they get them all to be exactly the same? I mean,
maybe they have to calibrate every. Yeah,
well, they have to calibrate every single one.
Yeah, it'll be the same.
Calibrate every single one.
Yeah, it'll be the same as most multi-screens these days, where it's all done via software. It's all software driven, so they tend to be very, very good when it comes. I mean, we didn't see any issues, did we, when we saw the wall?
No,
it looked perfectly fine from a reasonable distance. I mean, you get up close, but then you that size of screen, you're not going to be that close to it to see the joins and so on. So it's interesting. I would really want to see this because I want to see what it looks like when it's playing film back, because as we've always said on this podcast, projected images just look different. They just have their own look because the technology is different, because you're projecting the image onto another surface and so on. It has that cinematic look, because that's where you see that type of image. I wonder what it's like on an LED screen. Is it going to be the same kind of effect?
Or is it like watching a gigantic television, I suppose?
Is it watching like with frame interpolation switched on?
Or what did the wall look like in real life?
The wall looked really good. I've got to say, I was impressed. When you're standing, I mean, I was standing, let's think very, very quickly, probably about 17 to 20 feet back from it, and it was 146 inches, and I couldn't see any joins. And it was really, there wasn't any film material or anything like that. It was obviously, video that they'd shot themselves of waterfalls and that kind of thing. But I've got to say, I was really quite impressed with it.
Yeah, there were moments where it was almost 3D in appearance. There was some depth to it that it's quite staggering, because of the dynamic range, basically, on the image. It looked very impressive at times, I've got to say. Obviously, it's carefully chosen material, as you say, to show off the best aspects of the wall, but as the demo goes, it was very impressive.
Which is why I want to see the cinema screen. I want to see it at 30 feet. And I want to
see
it
actual film content.
With film content and see what it's like, because it's quite intriguing to me. And I suppose, again, it gets away from the need of having masking as well, because if you're showing a 1:85:1 ratio movie, you just switch off the panels at the side.
That you're not using.
So you get a total blackness at the side, so no need for masking, that kind of thing. Interesting. I want to see it though. So Samsung, if you're listening, and you've got one in the UK, we want to come and have a look at it.
Did Mark, when I was reading the piece, did they make it clear exactly how they're delivering 3D? Is it active shutter?
The glasses.
It must be, mustn't it? I can't imagine how it could be, unless they're...
Yes, it's active shutter, because the glasses are the same as the TV glasses.
That's what I was going to say. The glasses look the same as the TV glasses. Yeah. They didn't make it clear, no. But that would be my summation, that they are using active shutter, yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be anything else on a screen.
So it'd be interesting to see how they deal with anything like ghosting, or crosstalk.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see. I'd love to see one. Right, let's wrap up on hardware news with Ed's pick of the month. Now, we should have done this at the start of the month, or technically at the end of the month, but we had other things on and busy and all the rest of it. So we're going to do it now. It's only the where are we? Middle of the month. So yeah. It's what the hell. Just means you're going to do it again in 2 weeks. Your album, vinyl release and playlist of January, please.
Right, album and vinyl release are one and the same. It is a band called Calexico, who have been around for quite a long time. In so much as I believe this is their 9th album, and I've managed to move away from the page where I had it all up, so I could actually just tell you exactly what it was all called and stuff like that, because I'm an idiot. It was released right at the tail end of January, so it would have been ideal for the exact point when we did it, but it's still valid now. It's called The Thread That Keeps Us, and they're from Arizona, and it's a really distinctive sound without being sort of over weird, and it's just a great listen, and it comes on a really lovely double vinyl release, as well as being available on all of the major streaming services and on CD and all manner of more ordinary methods of getting hold of it. So it's a double whammy in that regard. I just really, really enjoy it. I mean, I've got a number of their albums, but I wasn't particularly taken with the last one, Feast of Wire. I think this is a much better effort. It gets a lot done, and it's a very, very good listen. Playlists, I was playing about with this yesterday, and I'd forgotten just how entertaining they are. On Tidal, and it's always Tidal for playlists. I'm sorry, Tidal's playlist game is just vastly better than everyone else's. Sorry, that's where it is. Is a 75-track playlist of They Might Be Giants songs. Now, you might be going, hang on, are they the people that did Birdhouse in Your Soul
Yes.
and the Malcolm in the Middle theme tune? And the answer is yes, they did both of those things. And if you're thinking, well, that's great, what are the other 73 songs? Just listen to it. They are one of the underrated gems of American pop music over the last 30 years. They are sensationally talented. Apparently, they're really lovely people. It's a really, really good listen. And if you were in a bad mood, it should put you in a better one.
I saw them live, actually, in 1989.
When you were 32.
Yeah.
Did they jump up and down a lot to Birdhouse in Your Soul?
Yeah, they did. Which was obviously at the time the only song any of us knew.
Yeah.
At the gig. But they were really good. They were really good live.
So, what, it was a gig of all the songs that nobody knew, and then they finished on that one, under encore.
Yeah. I played it twice.
I mean, there is one track, I think it's on here, it should be, Your Racist Friend, yes, Your Racist Friend, which was written best part of 30 years ago, and it's actually weirdly prescient for now. So they were way ahead of their time. So yeah, it's one of those things, if you don't believe me that they could possibly have done 75 tracks worth listening to, then don't bother, but it's really, really good, and easily my playlist of the month.
Okay, good stuff. And also, what have we got coming up review-wise? So let's stick with Ed. So what you got coming up this month, Ed?
Sorry, I was having a massive cough. I've got a pair of headphones going through, which were supposed to go through last month, but my son managed to wound them, so another pair has been dispatched, bless them. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to get back to you on some of the other bits, because I have been, dying. Well, not dying. I've been under the weather. I will be updating with the other things coming through this month presently, but there will be some interesting bits and bobs, I promise you. In terms of stuff that's in
review.
Sorry, Mark.
Review roundup. I was just hoping we might get a review roundup of cough medicine or something like that.
Well, I can tell you now that they're all totally ineffective. It would be the first time I'd ever wheel out the 1 out of 10 score on AVForums. In terms of things that are already in the tank, we've got a very, very affordable surround speaker package from Wharfdale, which will be going up later on this month, which is a genuine alternative with an affordable AVR to some of the higher specification sound bars. There is a unique turntable, and I don't use the word unique outside of its incorrect context. Yes?
Is it German?
No.
With a name like that, I immediately thought it was German.
It is not. It is from the south coast of the United Kingdom.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. It is. I've not done that many affordable turntable reviews recently, because fundamentally it was a case of, well, if you've got less than £1,000, tell me exactly how much you've got, and I'll tell you which Riga or project you want to buy. This is the first time in ages where it's like, well, this is genuinely potentially going to be an alternative to that. So that's another item that sort of passed through. There is RHA, the Scottish company, full of lovely, lovely people. They've built a challenger to the chord Mojo, which I've had a look at as well. And then I have also done some article pieces as well. I'd say one of which we discussed about streaming services, and I can't remember what the other one was. It was that compelling. But I'm going to put that down to being quite heavily medicated.
We'll believe you. Thousands won't, but we'll believe you. Steve, what have you got?
Right. Well, yes, I've got the Sony STR DN1080 AV receiver in for review. That's I'm just writing that up in a moment, actually. Very good, I've got to say. And
Does it do Dolby Vision?
It does support Dolby Vision. I suspect that Crane does not support their version of Dolby Vision. Got the Epson EH LS100 laser projector, which I mentioned, I think, last week. And also coming fairly soon, I've got the XTZ Spirit AV speaker package. And also another big speaker package from Arundel, 1723S THX speaker package. So those are coming in the near future. So yeah, I'm going to have to be making some room for all that kit.
At least you don't need that gym membership this month. Yeah.
I should be exercising quite vigorously.
Yeah, and you've got a review kit coming.
I'll be killing two birds with one stone.
Mark, have you got anything?
I've got the DVD Fab movie server, which is they're a software maker.
Thank God for that.
I've had that for about 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, I know. Well, I had to buy a bloody 3.5 inch SATA hard drive to bloody review it, which is annoying. But hey, I've done that now. Yeah, So that's part NAS, part Android media player. Quite capable, but I'm not sure that really it's necessary a product. I've got the Minix N42C4 Windows 10 mini PC, which I'm using right now, and it's shaping up quite nicely. And I've also got the Egret A11 Android media player, which they're trying to sell as a high-end thing, and I'm not sure about that either.
Okay, and all of those are this month, yeah?
Over the next 2 months. 3 in 2 months.
Okay. Yeah, and there's only one thing from me. Actually, it's just something I need to write up. It was reviewed a little while ago, and that's the Yamaha A3070. If you've got a 3050 or a 3060, absolutely no need for you to upgrade. It's the short answer to that one. And Mr. Botwright, are you reviewing anything this month?
Other than cold remedies, no.
Okay.
They're all totally non-functional except gin.
I think there's a gap in the
apricot
market.
brandy.
That's fair enough, yeah.
Get yourself a Netty rinse.
What the hell is that?
Netty rinse, it's the thing where you squirt the salt water up your nose.
Oh, Kirsten, my wife does that.
Yeah.
She says it's extremely effective. I'm going to actually be borrowing her Victorian vapor inhaler after this, because that's weirdly effective, and it makes you feel like you're in an opium den. But you know,
you're getting out the leeches next to you too.
Are you telling me, Ed, that there's no craft beer with cough mixture mixed into it? There's two in one.
There must be somewhere, but I don't have it here. I mean, generally speaking, in terms
mix
of
your own
dealing in, if you were trying to use beer as a cough mixture, you'd be looking for a heavy porter of some description, and I conveniently enough there is one in the Beer 52 box. But given that I am going to try and do some actual paying work after, for at least some of today, I didn't think it was a good idea to start using craft beer as medication quite this early on. So we'll see how we go.
Okay, coming up next is movie news. So, movie news. It is news because, yet again, this week, neither myself or Steve has managed to get to the cinema. That will change this week, though.
Yes, definitely.
There's definitely two films coming out that we both want to go and see. So we'll get them seen, or at least I'll try and get to at least one of them in the next week if it doesn't snow and I don't get trapped as I have been lately. So, coming up on Friday, the films that we're talking about, well, at least two of them anyway. Yeah,
well, actually, I know it says coming up on Friday, but in fact, Black Panther, latest Marvel film, actually opens on Tuesday. That's what's that, the 13th of February, and then The Shape of Water, the new film from Guillermo del Toro that's been nominated for 13 Academy Awards, that opens on the 14th, on the Wednesday. The other two films do actually open on the Friday. So first of all, Black Panther, latest, as I said, latest Marvel movie. I've got to say, I'm really looking forward to this one because first of all, it's the first Marvel movie featuring a black superhero as the lead character. Now, it's not the first Marvel character to do that because Blade was Pepper Wesley Snipes, so he's black, and he was obviously headlining his own films when they were made back in the 90s, but this is the first one within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's got one hell of a cast that includes Angela Bassett and Michael B. Jordan and Forrest Whitaker. I mean, it's got Andy Serkis in it, Martin Freeman. It's got a cracking cast, and it's got Ryan Coogler, who made the really, really good, I have to say, Creed. Far better than it ever should have been. It was a really good movie. He's co-written and directed this. So they've got a cracking director behind the scenes, a really great cast. They've been building up to this film quite a bit because the nation of Wakanda, which is where Black Panther comes from, is sort of like this high-tech African nation that they've been alluding to for various films. And they did briefly visit it at the end of Captain America Civil War, so they built up towards this. Obviously, this film is going to be the last film before Avengers Infinity War opens in May, or the end of April, actually. This is like their end game, so this one's obviously going to lead straight into the Avengers, and I think it's been successful for Marvel. I mean, when you look at the gamble they took originally with the Iron Man 10 years ago, that they have built up, unlike DC, have built up a successful franchise of movies that are all leading towards one big, massive superhero mashup. So that's Black Panther.
And if you're a Marvel comic book fan, then yeah, but for everybody else, we're absolutely bored to tears with this.
I don't know. I mean, I don't mind Marvel so much because they're drawing on 60 odd years of comic book stories and characters, so they've got plenty to do with. It's not like they're just making it all up from scratch, which I think would be difficult to do with so many films coming out. You're right, though. There are a lot of Marvel films this year. I mean, not just Black Panther and Avengers Infinity War and Ant-Man and the Wasp, which are all Marvel films. But there's also 2 X-Men movies and Venom, which is a Spider-Man related film, so from other studios. So yeah, I mean, if you're not a Marvel fan, there's a lot of it coming out. But yeah, I think this is an interesting film. It's been getting good reviews and it's massive advanced ticket sales. So clearly there is a demand for it. Moving on to The Shape of Water. I've got to say, I'm really looking forward to this. I love Guillermo del Toro. I think his films have a degree of artistry that's missing from a lot of other stuff these days. It seems like an interesting take on, it's almost like a sequel to The Creature from the Black Lagoon with a sort of aquatic man that's being held in a tank in a government facility in the 1960s, and a mute woman who's one of the cleaners, basically. It looks like she sort of falls in love with him. There's relations between the two, and she helps free him. But it's got, as I said, 13 Academy Award nominations. Sally Hawkins plays the lead, and she's a great actress. And Michael Shannon's the villain, and he's also very good at being villains. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I think it'll be interesting. Guillermo del Toro movies, and even the ones that aren't necessarily great, are always interesting. So yeah, that's good. And then on the Friday, we've got 2 films. Lady Bird, which was directed by Greta Gerwig, who's got an Oscar nomination, which is nice to see because women traditionally have not been nominated much when it comes to Best Director, and it's been getting really good reviews. Could possibly win Best Film, I think, because I mean it's one of those films where everyone likes it. It's maybe not some people may not like Shape of Water because it's more fantasy, but everyone likes Lady Bird. Stars Saoirse Ronan as a 17-year-old girl in growing up in California, and yeah, it's been getting good reviews, so I'm expecting that to do well. And also Father Figures, which is a comedy about 2 brothers played by Owen Wilson and Ed Helms, who basically discover that their father isn't dead, although he could be one of a number of different people, and they go off in search of him. And that's what's opening this week.
Yeah, am I the only one that's feeling this about Marvel stuff, Ed?
I respect the craft that's gone into the construction of the MCU, but now it's a case of doing edited highlights. I like the Guardians of the Galaxy film series, and I enjoy watching one or two of the others, but I'm out. I have now not watched enough of them to be adrift in the construction of this great overarching world.
That's me as well, yeah.
I'm not falling over myself to catch up, principally because it's just, the idea of watching the best part of, I'm trying to work it out, it's over 1,000 minutes of explosions. Wasn't necessarily on my list of things to do, but nonetheless, I admire in a world, in a situation where everything seems to be done on ridiculous accelerated timescales to achieve, maximum hit points under a maximum return for your investment. I admire what they've done enormously, and I admire the fact that on their way to constructing this universe, they have produced a number of belting films. But as someone that doesn't go to the cinema particularly often anyway, I'm pleased at what they've done, and you know what? I'm sure that at some point in the future, I will probably end up watching all of them, probably not in the right order. Yeah,
it's getting very it's getting very X-Men for me, and what I mean by that is I'm lost. Because I haven't been keeping up with it. I'm kind of lost as to where we are and what's been revealed and what hasn't been revealed. I mean, Black Panther, because I'm not a fan of the Marvel Universe, and I don't know the character, don't know any of the setup or anything. So for me, there's no great pull to go and see the movie. I'll go and see it anyway because I've got an unlimited card and I need to be getting my money back. But for me, I haven't been keeping up with it, and I'm lost, and a lot of it's starting to blur as well. And it's like, well, what's DC again and what's Marvel again? Because for me, I haven't followed it. I've never been into it, so lines start to get blended and blurred, and I'm struggling with it.
I'm the same with all the stuff on Netflix, all the Marvel stuff on Netflix. I know it all interlinks and it's all part of the same universe. I just find it quite daunting, really, to even get involved with it. So I don't.
That's just like the whole comic book background anyway. I mean, if you try to read any of the crossover comic books and you haven't been following stories up to that point, you are going to be lost. And I think, though, now the nice thing about what Marvel have done and Disney have done, it's kind of reached that critical mass where you've now got a big enough body of work that you can kind of drop in and drop out. And unless you're really following it and you're attaching great significance to it, it doesn't greatly matter. They work enough as standalone films anyway. You might not get a few of the little in jokes and things like that, But in general, they're still working as films anyway. You know, it's much the same as, you know, you could have watched the Hobbit trilogy without having already watched Lord of the Rings or something like that. You know, I think they work enough as films in their own right, and I think that there's a little bit of something for everyone now.
Yeah, it's true. I think they all are standalone films. I'm sure you'll enjoy Black Panther as a film in its own right, even if you don't get all the little references and crossover bits and bobs that be presumably linking towards Avengers a couple of months later.
But then I'll not be able to be a smart arse, will I?
Yeah, that's no use, is it?
You'll just hear the little titter of everyone else in the audience,
and then
pretend.
You get dead paranoid, don't you? Then
you feel like you're being left out.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Disc releases that we can enjoy in the privacy of our own homes and not get laughed at.
Well, we got the Lego Ninjago movie, which I suspect is a Lego movie too far. It didn't do that well. Didn't get that well received.
It's actually Ninjago.
Ninjago, is it?
Yeah.
Ninjago. Right. What's a Ninjago then?
Get it right, Grandad.
What is it? What is a Ninjago? Is that like a ninja with a ogo at the end or something?
It's a Lego ninja, basically.
Right, okay. So it's basically a Lego ninja movie.
I always called it Ninjago. That's what I've always called it.
Ninjago.
Well, it doesn't stop you all being wrong, then, does it?
Ninjago makes more sense because
it's
a ninja.
What I mean. Ninjago. That's.
No one went to
we're completely out of touch, people. I can hear people screaming at their podcast devices now.
Assuming that it wasn't aimed at a 50-year-old man, so fair enough. I hope it wasn't. Although the Lego movie, though, I mean, when that was announced, I remember thinking, right, I don't want to go and see a 2-hour advert for Lego. God, that'd be awful. Actually, it was really good because it was funny. It worked on multiple levels. It was appealed to kids, but there were loads of jokes for adults, and the whole film was an anti-commercialism statement built into a toy advert, which I think was just a meta genius. So, and the Batman Lego movie I enjoyed because it had all those in-jokes about Batman that were really funny. So they worked. This one I got no interest in, nor did anybody else, as it turns out. It didn't do very well.
Did I tell you I picked it up for £7.50?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's out on Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray as well. In terms of other releases, we've got The Mountain Between Us, which stars, actually I've written it with a capital S, it's not The Mountain Between US, it's The Mountain Between Us. That stars Idris Elba and Kate Winslet. That's out on Blu-ray, kind of a romance, but where they're trapped, I think they're in a plane crash or something, and they're stuck in the wilds. And I guess The Mountain Between Us is both physical and literal and metaphorical. It's also out on Blu-ray this week. We got The Deuce, the complete first season, which I saw on Now. Actually, it's an HBO series about the early days of the porn industry. It was really good, really good. Some fantastic writing. David Simon, who created The Wire, did it, and it's got a fantastic cast headed up by James Franco, and brilliant, really absolutely superb 70s detail. Really nails it.
What service is that on?
It's on Now TV. I don't know if it's still on Now TV, by the way. Right. It might be off at the moment, but I'm sure it will come back at some point. The director of photography, by the way, Phil, was Vanya Thingy, the guy that we interviewed at Panasonic a couple of years ago. Yeah. Does a cracking job. Really looks it looks 70s. It just feels 70s. Really good cast. Mostly unknown, but they all were really good. Thoroughly enjoyed that series. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really good. I should just warn, it is quite rude. Given the subject matter, that shouldn't be a massive surprise.
It's quite blue, is it, Steve? It's blue.
Yes.
It's a bit of blue.
Bit of blue for the dads.
It is a bit blue. There are some penises. I should say. Although I'm not sure if they were real.
You mean you can believe they were real?
The TV is getting very rude these days. I've just finished watching Altered Carbon, and that's quite rude. Not necessarily a complaint, more of an observation.
Steve, reactionary withers.
Channel 4.
Anyway, so The Deuce is out this week on Blu-ray.
Okay, so moving on, there was a thing called the Super Bowl, which was on recently, and during the advert breaks, there was a teaser trailer for a certain movie, and then I think it was the following morning in the US, which would have been our afternoon time, the full trailer was dropped for Solo, a Star Wars movie, and we've been waiting for this for a long time, Steve, and my reaction to it was meh. It's been a long time coming, and obviously we were talking about it on last week's podcast and saying, why haven't they released a trailer yet? How bad is it going to be? Well, it didn't look disastrous,
but it didn't look great either. It just looked like, I'd say, to me, it just looked like it had a very Marvel feel to it. Action scenes, bit flippant. The guy who's playing Han Solo, was it Alden Ehrenreich? I can't say either way, really. He certainly didn't seem like a young version of Harrison Ford. He had none of the swagger or charm. It did have a very Marvel feel to it. The action scenes, the whole tone. Obviously, you get to see the Millennium Falcon, which is newer in this, apparently.
Completely
less dirty.
Different. Yeah, completely different.
Front of it's different. If you notice, it's not got that gap. Yeah, I to be honest, I don't care. I'll go and see it, see what it's like. But given the problems it's had in terms of its production, I no one's expecting anything great. I don't know. It didn't do anything for me. I didn't think, I really must see that, or that looks amazing. I just thought that looks like a competently made Marvel movie set in the Star Wars universe, which I guess is what you'd expect these days from Disney, Lucasfilm, and directed by Ron Howard.
The people in the Star Wars universe never change their wardrobe. It's like the only way you can tell Solo is via the wardrobe, and then Lando is Lando because he's got his cape in the same wardrobe. You know what I mean?
Obviously the man has a thing for capes. That's fair enough. There aren't enough. I was going to say, in my opinion.
If you find that you can pull off the cape, you're not changing that wardrobe.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I mean, Lando did pull off the cape in Empire. I mean, Billy D. Williams, he pulled off wearing a cape, and not many men can pull off a cape. So I think Mark's right. If you've got a look that works, along with the tash, although he's got a little beard at the moment as well, I noticed, then fair enough, go for it. You fill your boots with your capes. That's what I I noticed he did abandon the cape at the end of Empire, didn't he, Phil? I think it was Family Guy that pointed it out. He's wearing Han's wardrobe.
Yeah,
which
totally.
He found in a cupboard in the Millennium Falcon.
He's got Han's jacket and shirt and everything. Yeah, it's quite now when you watch the film, you think, oh, that's a bit weird. Other news that was this week was Game of Thrones. The showrunners are to write the new Star Wars trilogy, or to write a new Star Wars trilogy. So this is separate from Rian Johnson, or is it Rian Johnson's trilogy?
No. This is completely separate. So they've already announced Rian Johnson is creating and writing a new Star Wars trilogy that's unconnected to the Skywalker trilogy that's currently being done, which I guess is good news in a sense that he can move away from that. And if he's writing the trilogy, then hopefully he'll write something that actually works as a trilogy rather than the current trilogy, which is being written in complete isolation from one another with no connective tissue whatsoever. But now they've announced that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who are the guys that run Game of Thrones, and obviously the last season is being shot right now, so they'll be finishing with that towards the end of this year, beginning of next year. They're going to write and create an entirely new trilogy of films for Star Wars, as well as the ones that Rian Johnson are working on, obviously, as well as the next Star Wars story, whatever that's about, plus Episode 9 that J.J. Abrams is doing. And they've announced 3 or 4 upcoming TV series as well. So they're basically going full on Marvel here. If you thought there was a lot of Marvel films knocking around,
now you made a good point earlier in the podcast where you said Marvel have a huge back catalogue of storylines, comic books, all the rest of it to pull on to work within for their movies. But the thing with Lucasfilm and Star Wars is they're making all this shit up.
Yeah, they're making it all up. So I mean, I guess you're at the mercy of the quality of the writers. Now, look, Benioff and Weiss clearly. They've done a brilliant job adapting Game of Thrones, and obviously for the last few seasons they've been, it's not just adapting, they've actually been writing it because the books haven't been written yet. So I think I trust them as storytellers. It'll be interesting to see. I guess it could be interesting if they can come up with something that's really good, then it could be really interesting. I think maybe moving away from the whole Skywalker thing is a good thing because for us that grew up with it, maybe they should just let that one lie now and just go off and do new stuff because there's plenty of potential.
Yeah. So what we're going to have is Rian Johnson's written and directed trilogy, and you're going to have this one with the Game of Thrones guys, and JJ's going to direct that. So it'll be the Rian versus JJ universes.
I quite like to see that, actually. I know whose universe I'd go and see first. It'll be JJ's. I think he understands Star Wars far better than Rian Johnson does, despite what Rian Johnson might say about being a fan. I think... JJ gets it better.
Now you say that, but then if I mention Star Trek Discovery to you, right, we both absolutely love that because really we're not that big Star Trek fans, and because it's not Star Trek, we're really enjoying it. As in, it's not traditional Star Trek.
it isn't even close to tradition. It's nothing to do with Star Trek. I mean, if you're a Star Trek fan, I totally understand why you would hate Star Trek Discovery. But because apart from anything else, it's supposed to be set 10 years before the original 5-year mission of Star Trek. But I mean, none of it. I don't know much about Star Trek, chronology. But even what little I do knows that this has got nothing to do with it whatsoever. It hasn't. But I'm really, really enjoying it.
Yeah,
I'm really
absolutely. It's a really slow burner to start with, and then it's just gotten so good for the last. I mean, we're on the penultimate episode this week, and then the last episode of season 1 is on Monday, I think, when the podcast comes out. I caught up with it this week. I was about 6 or 7 episodes back from where you were, Steve. And the amount of twists and turns and plot changes and, it's fabulous. It's not Star Trek in any way whatsoever, but it is just really, really good piece of sci-fi. It's well written. The acting is superb. It's really, really good acting. And it's very, Game of Thrones in the way that it deals with some of the main characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I've got to say, the extra time that they allowed for special effects and things like that have really paid off because production values wise, it's full on, it is cinema quality. I'm watching it on a big screen at home quite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it looks absolutely superb.
Yeah, I've been deliberately watching it on the projector on the big system, and even Dolby Digital Plus. I mean, the soundtrack is phenomenal. Yeah. They've spent a lot of time and money and effort. And again, when we saw the original trailers for this, would have been 2016 when we saw the original trailers for this.
Yeah,
and it looked terrible, didn't it? It looked like hand drawn special effects and all the rest of it. So they've spent the extra time on it, and now it's really paying off because the special effects are movie quality, makeup is movie quality. It's absolutely knocked me out just how good it is. I didn't expect much from it, and like you say, it's not traditional Star Trek in any way, and I think it worked because of that. So what you're saying about Star Wars, maybe they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, obviously, I guess we may feel aggrieved, but if you're Disney Lucasfilm, you're thinking, do I want to make films for 50-year-old blokes that are going to be dead soon, or do I want to make films for the new generation that are coming through, who don't have that connection and affinity and, sense of attachment to something from 41 years ago. So, yeah, I just don't have a problem with that so much. It was just the way that Rian Johnson treated certain characters.
Let's not go there. We'll be here for another hour.
But yes, if you are a Star Trek fan, then obviously what you should be watching is The Orville, because that basically is Seth MacFarlane's version of the Next Generation.
And again, Steve, really, really good. It's superbly written. The only weak point for me is Seth MacFarlane, because he can't act. He's a terrible actor, walks around with the same expression on his face all the time, one of wonderment all the time. He can't do any other facial expression, but it's so well written. There's a lot of Star Trek pedigree in there, so there's some of the producers have moved across there.
Penn Braga's in there.
And some of the directors, Jonathan Frakes is direct. Funnily enough, he was directing one episode of The Orville, and then the next episode of Star Trek Discovery, he was director of that as well.
Yeah, no, The Orville, the episode a couple of weeks ago about but what was a pure version of democracy where everyone gets to vote on everything all the time, was a really, really clever and a nice little commentary on social media and the way things are going. I remember when people are being tried and convicted on social media before anything has been proven in any kind of court of law. That kind of all-inclusive version of democracy, it was quite a clever concept, and I thought they did it really, really well. I know some Star Trek fans have moaned about The Orville because it does recycle quite a lot of plot points and ideas from The Next Generation. But since I didn't watch that either, pretty much, again, it's all fresh and new for me, so I'm really enjoying it. So I guess if you don't know anything about Star Trek, the 2 new series that are running at the moment are great because it's all fresh and new to me.
Yeah, good stuff. And anybody else caught up with these series, Mr. Botwright?
Nope.
I've got The Orville sort of ongoing. My wife has been watching Discovery. As I say, I haven't been watching as much television over the last couple of months, and this is a shame. I say a shame. It's an issue because the sheer volume of stuff that comes out is biblical. But I sort of made a conscious decision that I can't, you can't sort of dip in and out of most of these things. So they are on the back burner until such time as I might feel inclined to watch more telly.
Yeah, I know. It's like that was a real effort for me on Tuesday because I wanted to catch up with it and I had to put the time in to get the episodes done. But then when I finished that the trailer for Altered Carbon, and I really want to see that now, and it's like, oh, when are we going to have the time to watch this? And there's other things on there that I really want to see at the minute. There's so much good TV. Hodge?
No interest in the Star Trek stuff. I've started watching Altered Carbon last Friday, and it's a visual treat. I'm not sure about the rest of it, but it looks amazing.
Right.
I loved it. I've got to say, actually,
did you? I've only watched two, to be fair, so I need to.
But you've really got to pay attention. You've got to, because there's some serious world building going on here, and you've got to really, really pay attention to what's being said, because they don't treat you like idiots. They basically, they throw a lot of stuff at you very quickly, and you got to keep up. But stick with it. I think you'll enjoy it. It's and it looks. I mean,
it's beautiful.
It's cinema quality production. It must have cost quite a bit of money.
Well, you see, this is the thing with Netflix. They've really been up in the game recently in terms of what's available on there, how much money they're spending on stuff. So over Christmas we had Bright, which was Will Smith, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't spectacular in any way, but it was an all right 2 hours. I kind of got the concept, and I enjoyed it. I mean, like I say, it wasn't brilliant, and I can see where a lot of people are pulling faults with it and all the rest of it. I didn't look at it that deeply, but I enjoyed what was there. Then Cloverfield Paradox. Nobody knew this was coming, Steve. It was straight after the Super Bowl, and it suddenly popped up on Netflix, getting really mixed reviews. But again, it just shows you that nobody knew about this, nobody knew what was happening, and then all of a sudden it drops. We've just talked about Altered Carbon, which again looks like another, really well put together season of TV with spectacular visuals. Netflix are changing the game here, because there's a few other big things about to drop as well.
Yeah, they are changing the game to a degree. I mean, for example, Duncan, I think I mentioned this briefly last week, but things have we talked about it briefly last week, but a lot's happened in the last week, like you say, with the whole dropping the Cloverfield Paradox on everyone. There was a trailer for it during the Super Bowl saying you can watch it on Netflix after the Super Bowl. I mean, that's basically, this is a movie that was going to come out of the cinema regime until Paramount sold it to Netflix. So they're showing movies at home straight away to stream. And the thing is, they've got Mute coming in 2 weeks, which is directed by Duncan Jones, who made Moon and Warcraft and Source Code. And it apparently is set in the same universe as Moon. And he's made this with Netflix. So it's not like they bought it from other studios. It was made with Netflix. Again, it's a proper film, cinema quality film that could have been released at the cinema with cinema quality effects and acting, a cast and storyline. And that's going to be coming out on Netflix. And then a couple of weeks after that, Alex Garland's new movie, Annihilation, which was made for cinema release by Paramount and is being released in America theatrically by Paramount, but it's being released worldwide outside of the States by Netflix. So we get to watch that again the day it starts streaming from home. So, yeah, they're starting to deliver real films. I mean, the Okja, which came out last year, was actually included in at the Cannes Film Festival, much to a big outcry in France, saying, well, hang on, this wasn't a cinema release, this is a Netflix film. But, you've got Amazon starting to make films too now as well. What's the difference? If it looks like a movie and it's got Dolby Digital or Dolby Atmos soundtrack and Dolby Vision and the production values are there and the cast is there, it's a film. And if it's at home or at the cinema, I don't care, and I'm all for being able to sit down in the comfort of my home cinema or whatever.
Your idea of the future is order your groceries online to be delivered, get your movies piped down your shit internet connection, and never leave the house.
That's my present, isn't it?
That's my
future.
The thing is, though, before we celebrate the future being here, let's look at the common theme here. As you know, Cloverfield Paradox is getting some decidedly mixed reviews, and it seems abundantly clear from people that have watched it that it might not have actually started shooting as a Cloverfield film, let alone been envisaged as one. The Natalie Portman thing, test audiences have sort of come out of it looking like someone's sort of hit them quite hard in the face. It's quite an intense and a bit. It hasn't necessarily gelled with test audiences. Netflix is still being used as a means of release. Yeah, I don't dispute your point, Steve, that they are film quality, but they aren't necessarily quality films.
No, maybe not. But the Cloverfield Paradox is a specific example because clearly it was made, I think it was finished a long time ago actually, and as you say, they clearly shot it as one thing. I think it was originally called The God Particle, and then they kind of do some reshoots to turn it into a Cloverfield film. And having watched it, the connection is tenuous to say the least. Paramount obviously decided they'd spent 35 million, I think, making it, or 40 million. They'd figured they weren't going to make the money back, so they sold it to Netflix for a small profit. And now you might think, well, Netflix have got the ban in the deal. But, I mean, just think of the publicity Netflix got from their stunt they pulled on Sunday night. I mean, everyone was talking about it the next day. No one was talking about the Super Bowl. Everyone was talking about the fact that the Cloverfield Paradox has suddenly appeared out.
No, hang on, Lionel. Let's not overgeneralise. There was a lot of
Nobody
discussion
was talking about the Super Bowl.
Outside of America, who cares? But yeah, they definitely got a lot of publicity out of it. So I think that was their main goal, rather than it being, yes, it's not a quality film. But I've got high hopes for Mute, which was
I just wanted to
specifically
fact check here. This is the same Duncan Jones that's the son of David Bowie, is that right?
David Bowie, yes, that's
right.
correct.
Okay,
yes.
I just wanted to double check I had that right.
No, I'm when they start doing their own productions rather than buying stuff in, for whatever reason they might do that. And so, taking Altered Carbon as an example, that's obviously based on a book, but it's it's a real. I mean, you're getting more adult, intelligent productions that you're just not getting. If you look at the list of films I've listed for coming out this year. 25 films that are most anticipated, I mean, in terms of popularity and box office more than anything else. There's a lot of stuff in there that's just remakes and sequels and whatever. Original stuff and challenging stuff. And maybe Annihilation is too challenging for a mainstream audience. But that doesn't mean to say it's a bad film. No, so I'm all for that, really.
There still seems to be quite a clear demarcation, as far as I'm concerned, with Netflix exclusive stuff between TV content and films. I don't know, it caused a kind of a bit of a splash having Cloverfield Paradox with the Super Bowl kind of teasing it and that straight away available. However, I don't know how many times you can pull that trick. It needs to be quality next time. And I think as far as the film content goes, I think it's still lagging some way behind their exclusive TV stuff.
I tend to agree with you based on what we've seen so far. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Mark. I mean, this is the same company that gave Adam Sandler a shed load of money to go and make, 7 or 8 films for them? And none of them are very good at all. But then, what do you expect, really? Yeah, I think they've still got a fair way to go in terms of the movie side of things. But I think coming back to Steve's original point, which was this could be the future where not only is a film released theatrically that day, but you can also stream it if you want. And I think that model is coming closer and closer and closer. And I think maybe not the end of this decade, but maybe the start of the next one, that might become more of a reality.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Phil. I think that is, I mean, I guess from the point of view of the studios, the more money you can get in straight away, the better.
Get rid of your distribution costs. You know what I mean? Get rid of your cinema costs and your distribution costs and sell it direct to the audience. It makes perfect business sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Granted. I mean, if you wanted a weird sort of related point to this, obviously, that very large rocket, the Falcon Heavy, did its test flight, and we were all sort of, either confused, enraged, or enthused by the idea of, firing a car into orbit, ignoring the fact it's just, that's puff.
That's on its way to Mars, in fact.
People were sort of questioning what, under the current market, because it is this is still a business thing, what the requirement currently is to put 60 tons into low Earth orbit. No one's needed to do that. Well, pretty much since the ISS was built. In the list of things that Elon Musk has planned is this global satellite broadband undertaking, which does sound worryingly like what Samuel L. Jackson was doing in the original Kingsman film. I won't lie.
Well, Elon Musk is a shave away from being a Bond villain, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think he's great.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, feeding in from this, we've been talking about the limitations to doing this sort of thing are the fact that Steve sat on the end of 6 miles of Victorian copper wiring, with at the same time slowly whirring away in the background as the mechanics to actually make these distribution systems work correctly. And that then really does start to change a lot of the constants. So we'll get to see if that works. I was also enthused on an unrelated note. Do you know, obviously Falcon Heavy is the latest thing that SpaceX has been doing. They're now working on the bigger version of that, which they call the BFR. And can you imagine what that stands for?
Big rocket.
Big rocket, yeah. So they're quite Route One in this regard. So
I mean, when you watch that video, fair enough, the third booster rocket fell in the ocean and was destroyed. But when you see the two other boosters coming back down in sync and landing, that was just.
I don't care if he is a Bond villain. That was ridiculous.
That was superb.
Insanely cool.
Absolutely cool. Coolest thing I've seen this year so far.
And then you could watch the live stream from the car as it was orbiting Earth, playing David Bowie's Starman. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, no, he's a very cool guy, and he's doing some really cool stuff. I mean, he's doing the investment that the governments are no longer doing in terms of space technology, which. Yeah,
but the thing is, because it's being done on a market basis. I mean, there was an article in. I think it was New Scientist asking, why is SpaceX the first company to have been looking at, boosters that land themselves? And it sort of transpires that this was discussed. The idea was discussed as early as the 60s as part of Apollo and part of the follow-ons from Apollo. And broadly speaking, it was shot down partly legitimately because the computer processing required for the boosters to make the calculations to actually get their asses onto the ground was realistically beyond the technology of the time. But because it was government funded, it was a Cold War program and the money was unlimited, booster companies, the companies contracted to make the boosters basically talked them out of it because they got to make more boosters. Yeah. So, this is where it starts to get, more interesting, and when it's being done with at least some sort of eye on, can it be made to work viably financially in a loosest possible sense, then the results are always going to be more in sort of real world in the very loosest possible sense.
Yeah. So basically, what we're saying is, we could very well see not the end of this decade because the technology isn't quite there, but maybe the beginning of the next decade, we'll be able to watch new releases at the cinema or at home, and that's got to be that can only be the way that the studios are looking at things now, because they have to keep making money, and it makes sense just to sell direct to the consumer.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Well, also, you begin to think, how do you define a film anymore? Because if you watch Altered Carbon, it's a single story over 10 hours. I mean, it's just a 10-hour movie effectively. So it's kind of interesting, the blurring the lines between what I even class as a TV content and what I would class as a film anymore. It's just become, particularly with people binge watching these days. Yeah. That Altered Carbon is just a 10-hour film.
Well, same as Stranger Things.
Yeah, that is an 8-hour movie, isn't it? As simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And first world problems and stuff. What I find difficult watching these series on Netflix is because I'm watching it on a JVC projector, the handshake takes so long.
You hear that da-dung noise from the logo before you see it.
Well, it's not just that. You're sometimes you're 15, 20 seconds into the episode before the picture arrives. So I've now gotten into the habit that I quickly grabbing the remote, and then as soon as the episode starts, I pause it until the projector handshake catches up. And then the other annoying thing is, because it's in HDR, it trips the projector into HDR mode, which I don't want it. I've got a custom mode set up, but it continually trips it into it. So each new episode, because it's getting the metadata, it's tripping it into HDR mode. That's really annoying. Again, first world problems, I know.
Oh well. We'll get over it somehow.
How do you get around it, Steve?
Well, actually, it does. Yeah, I just usually by the time. Well, with these TV series, there's always the Netflix logo, and then it starts the credits. So as long as it comes up in time to skip the opening credits bit and get on with the episode, I don't mind.
Yeah. But the thing with Discovery is you usually get 7 minutes before the credits.
Yeah.
So that's the annoying bit. Anyway, like I say, first world problems. What's your thoughts on all this, Mr. Botwright?
What are we talking about here?
Well, you've got your choice of space travel, rockets, how crap the internet is, and Netflix launching same-day films. With
regards to Netflix, I'd love to know exactly what the the budget is for some of their series, because it seems to me that whilst it seems like perhaps we're heading towards an era where we will have films straight away available to watch, the kind of balance between what's spent on a TV series and, say, getting 10 hours of content out of that still weights everything further into the realms of that. Because it takes something like Altered Carbon. You could have tried to make that as a film. Previously there are lots of sci-fis that could have been great series that would have been made as films. But if you've got the chance to get 10 hours of content out of something and spend similar to, a smaller Hollywood film, you're going to do that. I can't see why you would do anything other than that. And so which kind of leaves them with the only kind of films they'll be picking up will be things like, Cloverfield Paradox and things that someone's selling off.
I've spoken to people in the industry, as has Steve, and we've discussed this with them, and I've also heard it in other interviews with people in the industry. There's a lot of talent that's moving over to these TV series, to the long form, because they feel creatively they're getting more out of it, and they can do more with it than they can with it, like, say, an hour and a half, 2 hours of a movie.
Yeah, if you're being told you have to deliver a 2-hour film and a PG-13 rating, that immediately limits you creatively, doesn't it, to what you can and can't do. Whereas Netflix will say you can do whatever you like in 10 hours, and we don't care, whatever it is. Which is why, people like David Fincher, with the original House of Cards, right at the very beginning, when their first big Netflix original series, they got someone of the quality of Fincher in who was because he was given complete creative freedom, which I don't think he would have got from a traditional studio, should I say. Anyway, it's exciting, isn't it? I mean, we've got the problem we've got is there's too much, too much.
Well, you say that, and at the minute with in the UK, how many big providers have we got? We got Netflix, you got Amazon, you got Now TV, which is Sky's platform, and you got BBC iPlayer. The thing is, when you're talking about this, we've been saying, well, it might be on Netflix that we get these same day releases. The trouble here is that Disney have pulled all their stuff in the States. There wasn't a lot of Disney stuff on Netflix in the UK, but there was in the States, and they're starting their own streaming. So Disney have got a hell of a pull there, and that's going to be another service. So what's going to stop Paramount or Universal or Sony starting their own streaming services and starting to pull their content together and starting to do same day releases? Is it going to be that by the time 2020 comes around, we've got 7 or 8 subscriptions at £10 a month or more because we want to get all these different? It just becomes where do you go for the best?
Are we going to inherit like the kind of American cable box system, but just with streaming services?
Yeah, that's the risk, isn't it? And if there's money in it, and Netflix are obviously proven that is the case at the minute, then the studios, they're going to see their distribution and all the rest of it, and they're going to think, well, why are we not doing our own thing, and why are we not? With the content we have, why don't we have our own streaming service and charge people £10 a month for it? And before you know it, you've got 7 or 8 streaming services, and then you're having to pick and choose which ones you want to go with. Yeah,
you're absolutely right, Phil. I think fragmentation is the big risk going forward with streaming services, because obviously if you can deliver your own stuff and there's no real overheads apart from obviously maintaining the servers and everything, then it's a quick and easy way of making money. So, but we don't want to be in a situation where you have to pay £10 a month for 7 different services, because that'll add up pretty quickly.
Well, it'll be £70, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. I'm assuming you may not go for all 7.
And on that mathematical bombshell, that's it for this week's podcast. My thanks to Steve Withers.
A house divided against itself will be better than this.
Mark Hodgkinson.
And we now return to Where Are My Pants?
And Selley.
Today will not be known as Taco Tuesday. It will be known as Freedom Friday, but still on a Tuesday.
And Mark Botwright.
I sure do love giant sausages.
Don't forget you can... Sorry. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums.com for latest reviews, news and videos, and of course leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.